This is ANTIC, the Atari 8-Bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savetz.
We're bits and bytes,
they're bits and bytes.
We're mighty mites,
they're mighty mites.
We're the ones who switch the switches and do light the lights. Screens on the blink,
Screens on the blink.
discs out of sync.
Discs out of sync.
We're computer troubleshooters and we're fast as winks.
They're each a whiz.
We're each a whiz,
Mr. and Ms.
Mr. and Ms. There's every chance we simply are the best there is. We're brave and bold,
They're brave and bold.
we're solid gold,
They're solid gold.
and we help them sell computers to you till they're sold.
I love old computers. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you knew that already. I also love musical theater. So when I found out about Bits and Bytes, a 1983 musical about computers, well, that's right in my wheelhouse. Bits and Bytes was an educational touring production created by South Coast Repertory Theater, a professional theater company located in Costa Mesa, California. It was a 45-minute musical show aimed at school kids that was performed at elementary schools across Southern California from January through June of 1983. More than 60,000 children saw the show. The story is about Happy, a naive girl who goes into a computer store for the first time, wondering if a computer can solve all her problems and make her truly happy. Morton B. Norton, a pushy, overzealous computer salesman, tries to sell her a computer with the help of wacky sidekicks, Bits and Bytes. Through speech and song, the team teaches Happy about computers, what they can and can't do. A computer could help her be more organized, get her homework done, and play games. But Happy learns that a computer cannot really think and is not a substitute for real human friends.
Computer right away. Don't you wait another day. There's a rate you're glad to pay for your computer by today. It's for sure they're here to say. Don't you wait another day. Get your computer right away.
The goal of the play was to show the realistic capabilities of computers as distinguished from commercial hype and science fiction fantasy. Another goal was to emphasize the talents unique to human beings, what makes us different from computers. South Coast Repertory Theater's educational touring productions took short, original plays into area primary schools. The topic of computers was chosen for the 1983 production because parents, teachers, and principals who were surveyed overwhelmingly chose computer literacy as the topic they wanted to see covered. Previous educational touring shows included Tomato Surprise about nutrition, The Fitness Game about physical fitness, and The Energy Show about conserving energy. Bits and Bytes was written by Michael Bigelow Dixon and Jerry Patch, with music by Diane King. It was directed by John David Keller, with set design by Dwight Richard Odell. The assistant director and choreographer was Diane DePriest. An ensemble of 5 played all the roles, with one doubling as stage manager. The cast was Robert Crow, Sam Hammond, James LeGros, Laura Leyva, and Deborah Nissimura. Bits and Bytes won the 1983 Pioneer Drama Service Award for Best New Play. It ran for 246 performances, breaking the booking record for South Coast Repertory Theater. The January 29, 1983 issue of the Los Angeles Times said, "In some respects, the current show is the most impressive so far. Now that computer technology has entered the home and workplace, as well as the shopping mall, it's noteworthy that a play can tell us how much more computers can do than launch missiles and gobble up space villains. Diane King composed such a fine score, which includes evocations of different eras of pop music, that it almost has commercial possibilities of its own. Laura Leyva plays Happy, the girl who, for a very long time, is led to believe, along with the rest of us, that the computer will solve all her problems. That's a dangerous and depressingly facile notion whose emphasis, early on, far outweighs the author's concluding moral that computers can only deal with facts, not feelings. But Bits and Bytes humorously shows its audience of kids how advanced and widespread the computer revolution has become, and that they stand well ahead of their parents at its ramparts.
Next time your monitor turns up blank, next time your program goes into the tank, when everything you've worked on turns out rank, remember you got us bugs to thank. Let's block, hey bugs, let's block, oh let's block, hey bugs, let's block. The kids will get a shock when we get your circuits blah 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 blah.
Texas Instruments donated a computer to the production, a TI-99-4A with monitor, peripheral expansion box, speech synthesizer, disk drives, and software. The computer was used as part of the set. I interviewed 3 people who helped create Bits and Bytes. First, Michael Bigelow Dixon, who is co-author of the play. Next, we'll hear from Diane King, the composer. Finally, we'll hear from Laura Leyva, the actress who played the role of Happy. First, my interview with Michael Bigelow Dixon. He and Jerry Patch wrote the play.
I've been a theater major once I gave up being a math major in college and went off to get a MFA in playwriting at University of North Carolina, and then headed out to Hollywood to make my fame and fortune, and fortunately ended up at South Coast Repertory, which is in Orange County, California, in Costa Mesa. Mm-hmm. And they're a terrific nonprofit professional theater that does annually, 2 seasons at least of both classical and they've really made their reputation on doing new plays. And one of their programs is this educational touring production, which they had been doing for years before I got there and have been doing years since. But the 4 years I was there, I contributed to as a playwright on 3 of the scripts, and Bits and Bytes is one of them.
Cool. So just for kind of context, what were the other ones you did? What other kind of things were they educating about?
Oh, the previous one, the one right before Bits and Bytes, was the fitness game, and used the game show format to motivate kids and inform them about physical fitness. And the one after Bits and Bytes was dealing with the immigrant and refugee phenomenon at that time in Southern California, which was experiencing the growth of immigrant and refugees coming from around the world. And so, I don't know, I guess history is pretty cyclical, but there we were 30 years ahead of the moment where, we're dealing with it all again. But that play was called Finding Home, and ended up with, the topic was of such interest that we generated a second play called Second Lives, and a book of interviews and articles, and a national conference that featured somebody from, I think, the INS, who came from Washington, D.C. to join us on stage for a panel discussion and stuff. So it was a big project, and just built on the momentum, as you pointed out, and I didn't know, that Bits and Bytes actually sort of set a new record for the number of performances that these educational touring productions did in Southern California. So the theater had a great reputation, and the leadership picked the topics, and they certainly picked one of interest in the moment with Bits and Bytes, though it seems incredibly naive now, having just read the script again after 30 years.
Why do you say it's naive? It seems naive now.
Well, it's just so basic. I mean, it's just talking about how the machine works and what the memory is and what it can do and what it can't do. And that all was new information to everybody at the time. And the idea that you would actually own one of these was sort of a new concept at the time. So it was sort of demystifying and demythologizing what a computer was for students who would get one hopefully in the near future. But not everybody had them. They were expensive, as I recall, at that time.
Mm-hmm. So these were plays that the performers actually went to schools and played them in auditoriums or gyms or whatever. Is that right?
Yes, they went all over Southern California, and they fortunately were young people because, Orange County is relatively centrally located between San Diego and Los Angeles, and then inland Riverside. But they played in all of those counties, and they got up at 4 a.m., I think, to get in the car, to get the trailer with the scenery, to head out to the school they were going to, and then to do the setup, unload the trailer, do the setup, do the performance, and they usually did 2 a day.
Wow.
So it was a scheduling challenge.
I bet.
Yeah.
So how did you get this play? You said that the powers that be decided that computers were a topic that needed to be covered, and how did they come to you and say, okay, want to play about computers? Did they give you a list of topics, or kind of how does that work?
My co-writer, Jerry Patch, had written a couple of these, and I think the composer might have been new that year, Diane King, and she was terrific. And we got together and sort of made a chart, as I recall, and one was a dramatic chart. It was sort of an Excel idea, sort of a vertical and a horizontal axis. And as the play moved through time, maybe down the vertical, and the character had a dramatic journey, which she does in this play, and he does. Each chapter, each scene in that journey dealt with a different educational facet, or a different facet of the computers that was educational for our purposes. So we had it, so we sort of charted out to make sure we were covering new content in each scene, but also moving the play along dramatically.
Mm-hmm. It must be quite a balancing act to do the education and entertainment within the play.
It is in the writing, sort of conceiving of it is pretty simple once you get the framework. And I think, the idea in this one obviously is it's driven by the desires of a salesman to sell a computer, and to somebody who's not knowledgeable at the time, a young gal. So she has to learn, and so the audience gets to learn along with her. Was the idea that we hoped would appeal to the young people in the audience, and it did.
Do you feel that the kids did learn from it? Did you get any feedback?
Yeah, these are high energy shows. I don't know, what are there, 6 or 8 songs in it, and they traveled with a good sound system. They plugged in wherever they went, and so there was lots of energy. The costumes were extremely colorful. The characters are, fantastic. Bits and Bytes are characters along with some humans, and it's a lot of fun. So I suspect on rereading it, it might have been more fun than educational. But I think if you're going to make an error in one direction or the other, that's probably the right direction.
Sure. So as you said before, it ran for more shows than any other play that theater had done to that point. Was that gratifying? Was it surprising? How did you feel about it?
Well, it was certainly rewarding for the theater that needed to fund this. It had to be like everything else in the education system, right? Stuff has to be affordable for schools that don't have a lot of money, and to be affordable, then you have to get enough productions that you can begin to pay the expenses of the project. Because again, there was a lot of scenery, there's a lot of mileage put on that car and that trailer, and the costumes and the sound and all that. So it's an expensive project, but I think it was successful on a sort of commercial level, if you will, because the number of performances, I think, ultimately helped pay for the venture.
Mm-hmm. So going into it, did you know much about computers?
No, and I don't think I got a computer till the next year. My first computer was a K-Pro with a tractor printer, and we got a computer sent to us by Texas Instruments. I think we just sent out some letters to various companies and to see if they were interested in supporting the project in some way. And Texas Instruments just sent us a little box computer, like a monitor that was sort of a foot square or cubic, I guess, and a keyboard. And we ended up incorporating that into the set for the piece, into the scenery.
Just kind of a prop with blinking lights and to look cool on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Texas Instruments had a great reputation for calculators. I don't know what happened to their computer business. Maybe they're still making them.
No, they did for a while. I don't know if they. I would be interested to know if they sent you one of their consumer computers, like a Texas Instruments 994A, or if they sent you something weird.
I think it was a consumer one.
Yeah.
We were novice enough that we had a hard time figuring it out.
Can you talk to me about the process of writing the play with your co-author?
Having come up with the concept that the salesman would work hard to convince this young person that this computer would solve all of her problems, and it solved most of them. It didn't ultimately solve the one that she wanted, which was she needed a friend. I think we divided up the scenes and each wrote a first draft of alternating scenes or something like that, and then traded them, and each sort of revised the other's scenes and whatnot. I looked at it, and it all seems to come from one voice, and I can't remember which scenes I wrote and which I didn't, which I was the first writer on and which I wasn't. But that's sort of how we worked on 3 projects together over 3 years.
Nice. So you said you hadn't used a computer yourself. So where did the information come from?
It's all, I like theater that connects me to the world. And so any project that's new to me that I get to learn things from is a project I tend to enjoy. So we set out to learn. We did have a big word processor in the theater, just a big machine with a keyboard and monitor that was just a fancy. It was like an RCA or maybe it was IBM or something, and it had the memory part of it. The machinery part of it was huge. It was bigger than a suitcase, and needed to be in a very air-conditioned. They had to build and put glass walls in and seal it off and air condition it so that they could just do word processing. And then they had a dedicated typist who would type stuff in. So I guess we had that idea of computers at the time, as well as the science fiction. This was a time when Tron came out. About the same time.
Sure.
So I don't know. Everything seemed, and as I recall about the story they tell about Tron, at the time at least, is they set out to make the film before they knew how they would make the film. They didn't have all the technology to do all the effects they wanted to do, or the script called for. So that sort of was our approach. We just set out to discover what we needed to know in order to do the project we had set out to do.
Sure, that makes sense. Did you get any feedback from students or teachers after you put it out in the world?
Probably, but I don't recall, except the play itself sort of creates a rooting interest in the young woman's journey and the salesman's efforts, and so they tend to get kids worked up on, to root for them in the process of the performance. And they go out. In this place, they kind of daring now that I look back on it. That the character goes out into the audience and pulls up 3 students on stage to talk about whether the computer can help her pick which one would be her best friend or something. That just sort of seems sort of risky for those 3 kids, but I'm sure the audience loved it, and the kids probably loved it and stuff. But I'm sure they would. I don't know. Audience participation just always makes me nervous as
Sure.
a person who doesn't want to get pulled up on stage.
So when are we going to see a revival of Bits and Bytes?
You know, it got published. I think it won an award, as I recall, from Pioneer Drama Service. So I don't know how many. I don't think that publication made us rich, because it's then tied to sales and future production royalties, which I don't remember any checks. But maybe it led to a number of productions elsewhere. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know that. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense now, would it? Except as sort of a museum curiosity.
It's so obsolete now that I don't think it would make sense. But I mean, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it's energetic and fun theater, but the contents, obsolete sounds like a good word for it.
So what haven't I asked you about Bits and Bytes that I should have?
I think, and you know, these projects were, as we went along, got a little more sophisticated in involving, just because it took time, and the theater staff got a little bigger, involving scholars and other professionals in the world in both the content and the creation, and then the sort of launch of the piece. Mm-hmm. And I remember that the year before, Kathy Rigby came to the theater to help launch the fitness game. Mm-hmm. So she was sort of the entertainer host of the event, followed by a performance of the event, and that was nice of her. And I can't remember, and I'm sure we had some big launch so educators could come and see it, sort of a preview at the theater on the main stage of the show. And I can't remember who might have helped us launch that. But the following year, we had the big launch of Finding Home, about the immigrant and refugee contemporary scene at that time, with a huge panel discussion with people from all over the world who had come to Southern California. Mm-hmm. And we must have had something like that. And I bet it's covered. I bet the Los Angeles Times or the Orange County Register did a story on that launch, because that was also part of the point, to get publicity.
If you could send a message to the kids who saw the play, and now they're adults who have fond memories of the play, I hope, what message would you give them?
Well, I guess I'd just be curious to remember, or to ask them what they remember about it, what stood out. And I'm willing to bet that it was the performances that stood out, that they probably attached or took a special interest in one of the characters, either Happy or Bits and Bytes that show up, or Norton. That ultimately, I think that the Marshall McLuhan was right, that the medium is the message, and that probably I wonder if what they took away from it wasn't the excitement of live theater, rather than whatever computer content the show tried to convey, which would be fine too. I think that would be part of the theater's mission anyway, to spread that message that the theater is an exciting art form, and that they can enjoy it. So I guess I'd be, what do they remember? And I'm betting it's the performance and not the content.
Next, I talked with Diane King, who composed the music for Bits and Bytes.
Well, I started out as a classical pianist. My grandmother taught me. She had come over from Italy and was living with us, and I heard her playing, and I wanted to learn. So I started out as a pianist, and then also growing up, my family always had symphonic music and operas and musicals and everything, and always loved that type of storytelling, of having the combination of wonderful music and songs and action, and fell in love with musical theater, basically. So when I studied voice, I studied piano. When I got to college age, I thought I was going to enter either as a composer or a classical pianist. And I had written, just a bunch of songs in high school, not very good. And at the last minute, I thought, you know what, I'm not sure I want to make that my main thing, so I just stuck with the piano as my major. Took some composition classes in college, and you had to follow the formula, and I've never been one to follow a formula, so I kind of got graded down on my projects, even though everybody loved the sound of them. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, good, I'm just going to keep following my instincts. And pretty much after college, I got hired to write my first children's musical for the city of Anaheim. It was their bicentennial. It was called 76 by 76. And it was, stories of America, like Johnny Appleseed and Paul Revere's story, and all kind of rolled into one. And then I met up with some actors that were at South Coast Repertory and was playing them some of my stuff. And John David Keller, who directed many, many, many of these educational touring shows that South Coast Rep put out, said, well, why don't you write our next one? I went, sure, okay. So that led to Bits and Bytes. And then from there, I started writing scores for their main stage productions. I did like scores for Galileo and Benefactors and Birds and The Seagull, and along with writing these educational touring musicals. And then also for another part of the theater, they had a youth musical theater department. I started writing musicals for them, and pretty much been writing my whole life. It goes in spits and spurts depending on what else is going on. And I've written what I call grown-up shows too, not educational and not for kids, because I said I need to write something for grown-ups here. And one of them won the Best New Musical Award, the Lee Korff Playwriting Award. And the show is called Spellbound. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I had another one called On Stage. And then I wrote with a partner a world's premiere that was commissioned for the Laguna Playhouse called The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, based on L. Frank Baum's book, of course, well known for Wizard of Oz.
So this is the first educational play that
this was my very first one, yes, for them. Well, the 76 by 76 was sort of the very first one, aimed at, a show going into the schools and touring around Anaheim and Orange County. Mm-hmm. And that was a much shorter and less complex piece. Bits and Bytes was really my first full-blown one, with having a budget for recording and hiring musicians and, creating harmonies for the singers and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, this is the first one. And then it won. Michael submitted it to the Pioneer Drama, I think that's it, Pioneer Drama Service, and we won the Best New Musical of the Year for whatever that year was. Let's see, I have it right here. Pioneer Drama Service, what year did we put? 1983.
1983,
yeah.
Yeah, the Publishers Award for Best New Play, yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you know anything about computers going in, or were you a...
I knew nothing. I knew nothing about computers. I mean, I had a calculator at home. I had my electric typewriter, which I thought was, new and snazzy. I'd heard about computers and knew that they did magical things as far as, collecting data and all of that, but I had no idea. So luckily, Jerry Patch, who did the book with Michael, they did the homework and passed it on to me. And then it was up to me to take that verbiage and create music that would tell the story of these things. So I was just listening to a snippet, and there's one song that I wrote for a desk calculator, a typewriter, and I think a telephone or something, and they're bewailing the fact that they're obsolete now because everything that they did can be done faster by a computer, and the computer doesn't call in sick.
An older class might remember us and all the jobs we used to do. I bet the any function that you choose. But, once upon a time we were the office stars. We did the paperwork and kept things up to par. Only yesterday we were so wunderbar. And now we might as well be sitting up on Mars. We're obsolete, we can't compete. Guilted by the office girl cause we didn't suit her. We've had our day, now we're passé. Replaced by something faster, if not much cuter. The computer working night and day without any pay. It's quiet and never calls in sick. It does the work of 20 office clerks without mistakes and twice as quick. So now we're antique even as we speak. Victims of our progress, we suppose. Last year's smash is this year's trash, and that's the way technology goes.
It was kind of it was a great education for me to have to learn about all this stuff. And I said, what the heck is a bit and what the heck is a byte? So I learned, between a bit and a byte. And yeah, it was kind of wild. Not knowing my subject matter at all before having to write music for it.
Right. Oh,
but like I said, the guys did a great job on their research and, passing it on to me and then distilling it.
So can you talk about, I don't know if this will be specific to this play or just in general as someone who's, more about crafting the book and music together? How much do the authors write the book and then just like, okay, we need music here, here, and here, and here, and then you just come back, or is it more of a collaborative the whole time?
It starts with these educational shows. We have certain parameters that we have to meet. Length of time is important. That's the main thing. They call it bell-to-bell theater because it has to fit within that time frame of either 45 or 50 minutes. And so it starts with whatever subject we get handed that they want to put out into the schools to educate the kids about. Then Jerry and Michael would start with just a very rough outline of what kind of characters do we want to have. And we always were also limited to only 5 people because it was a touring show. And with the budgets, they could only hire 5 actors, one of them doubling as stage manager, hit the tape button. So there were constricts. There's time constrict, character constrict, and then, content. So they would start with, okay, what do we want to call these characters? They were always supposed to be kids, more because we hired professionals, they were always high school kids, but sometimes they would play younger, or sometimes there would be a mom and dad that would show up for one scene, and then they'd go back to being a kid. So they'd do the rough outline, and then we'd go through and say, okay, well, at this point, first we need an opening number about computers. So that you can just start working on right now. In the early days, they did most of the lyrics, and I had to work with what they gave me, which was okay some of the time, and some of the time the scanning of how the syllables lined up, or just a lyric was like not very singable. So I do a little bit of battle, and usually got my way, which was good because, like, listen, I know how a singer scans a line and makes it musical to make the lyric make sense. And then we just go back and forth, and thank goodness, usually my first rough draft of the music fit what they were wanting, and I didn't have to do a ton of rewrites, also because we had a short time to write it and then rehearse it and get it out there. And there were only a few times through the years with these shows that Jerry said, I don't like that song, and the director said, no, but I really like it, and somehow Jerry always won out. No, I don't like that song. You need to write something else. But then not too often. So I was very pleased with that. And then finally, we get to a rough sing through, read through with me doing all the parts and singing at the piano and getting signed off on it. And then the next thing was to score it and then, write it all out by hand, because this is before Sibelius and finale programs were invented. So everything was by hand. And if you had to make a mistake, you had to go back and redo the whole page, because you couldn't just insert a measure like you can on the programs on the computer.
Sure.
I tell you, nowadays when I have to do something, I get done in half an hour where it used to take me 5 or 6 hours. Just because those programs are so amazing as far as editing, changing a key or adding a measure, or you want to delete this but save it for later. And gosh, it's just awesome. It's an awesome program.
Yeah, that must have been terrible. I mean, if you wrote a song back then and it didn't fit in the singer's key, you were kind of have to rewrite the whole darn thing.
You have to go back all the way back. Rewrite the whole thing by hand. And so I'm looking here at what they printed. It was a handwritten score. It's my manuscript in there.
So this is your handwriting I'm looking at in the score?
When you're looking at the notes and even the lyrics, that's my little hand. Yep.
Nice. Save for all posterity.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
What other educational plays have you done, and was this the weirdest? I don't know if I want the answer to be yes or no.
I think it was the weirdest because it was about machines and not people. I mean, we had people in there. Obviously, we had, but mostly it was about these computers. So I would say that, yes, this is the weirdest one I ever did, and it was the first one out of the bag. So that's good. I got that done with. Other ones that we've done, one was called Finding Home. This is one of my favorites, Finding Home. It was about a California surfer dude who was looking for the perfect wave, and he winds up surfing out so far he comes to this little unknown island called Aboland, and they speak Abolese. So we have this made-up language, and this whole premise was that this kid is the immigrant, and all these other people are the natives, and they don't want him there. They want him to go away. So we were relating it at the time, deja vu here, with immigrant situation, in California with the Mexicans and all of that, and how we were trying to say anyone can be put in that situation if they're going to a land that is not their homeland, and we need to treat those people better. It's kind of the gist of the story, and that was a really cool one. Another one we did was about self-esteem called The Right Self, and that came out shortly after the movie The Right Stuff. So that's Jerry Patch's idea. He wanted to do a spin on that title. So we called it The Right Self. And it was like Camp, I Want a Persona. It was about these kids that go to camp, and they all have their problems, and their challenges. And it's about learning to find something about yourself that you feel good about and building self-esteem. Another one was Mountains and Molehills, about, problem solving as a kid and how to know when something is a really big problem and it's really not. The difference between something that you need to go talk to mom and dad about or other things that are just like, you're just having a crummy day. It's okay. It's not that big a deal. Fair enough.
Nice. It seemed like the points of Bits and Bytes was to kind of teach kids that computers are useful tools, but they don't have feelings, and they don't replace having a friend.
Right.
Were these concepts like handed down from somebody? Like, okay, these are the points that we want to hit in the story.
I think those discussions, I believe, happened before I came into the room. I think first. And I don't remember if it was David M., the producer, artistic director, had a discussion with John David, who was our director of all those shows, if they discussed what they thought was current in elementary school, because most of these shows went into elementary schools, not beyond. Situations that kids would be facing, something that would help educate them, enlighten them, and give them something to think about as far as whatever it was. So with and there's one of my favorite songs in the show is Who's Gonna Love You When the Power Blows? Meaning you can't just, sit there and play Mario Brothers all day long. You don't not have a real friend.
When a girl tells her terminal everything she knows, what she's supposed to do and nothing goes. When the circuits block and her programs froze, who's gonna love her when the power blows? Who's gonna love her when the power blows? so blue. Got no one to tell my troubles to. Circuits are down from the overload. Who's gonna love me when the power blows? Who's gonna love her when the power blows? Got a problem that sticks like glue, and I need a friend to be close to. Making things better is how it goes, but who's gonna love me when the power blows? Who's gonna love you when the power blows? When a girl tells her terminal everything she knows, what she's supposed to do and nothing goes. When the circuits block and her program's froze, who's gonna love her when the power blows? Who's gonna love her when the power blows?
Yes, it's about balance, because I think, gosh, I don't remember now, because I never did video games. Were they prevalent in the mid '80s?
Sure. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And you,
Yeah,
you
right?
even have a song
Yeah.
about it. I think it's almost your last song.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, So she's and then who's gonna love you when the power blows? And then I know there's the chomping, chewing, eat or be eaten. That's the one.
Right.
Yes.
Eat or be
About
eaten, beat or be
Pac-Man.
beaten, score all you can before they get your man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, and about how those are fun, but you don't want to get addicted to playing those all day long and not have a life. So,
Sure.
yeah.
We race around the screen, we're blue and gold and green, up and down and left and right, eating everything in sight. We're heroes on the scene, all blown to smithereens, a chomping, chewing, happy face, all blasting into outer space. Eat or be eaten, beat or be beaten, score all you can before they get your man. Pings and zings and booms, all leaders meet their dooms. Battle stations, everyone, it's time to have computer fun. Space invaders, wow, gonna blast off now. What a way to spend the day, being blown away. Beat or be eaten, beat or be beaten, score all you can before they get your man. All the meals you've missed, you've got aching wrists. Standing hurts your knees and shins, you don't care if last who wins. Blisters on your thumbs, your neck and shoulders numb. The blasting sounds and eyeball strain give you one Pac-Man migraine. Eat or be eaten, beat or be beaten, score all you can before they get your man. We race around the screen, we're blue and gold and green.
Did you get any feedback from kids or from teachers after you created it?
Oh, I didn't get to go out into the schools to see and hear, but I know we used to get letters and pictures that the kids would do post the presentation, and sometimes they'd mail them back to the office, and we always got just such wonderful feedback from the kids. And I don't personally have any of those letters in my files here. And I'm sure they were kept for a while and then went to archives, and then they probably went into the great recycling center in the sky.
Sure.
But I know from the actors, talking to us how much the kids loved the shows. I know one of the costumes that Richard Odell created for Bits and Bytes, he did these giant foam sort of like, how Mr. SpongeBob looks?
Yeah.
That character?
Yeah.
So is that kind of an idea for the calculator and the, forget what the other machines were. He made them out of this giant foam stuff. And the kids just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So costumes really helped a lot with the visual for the shows.
That sounds like fun. And I understand visually you guys also had a computer mock-up thing that was actually made by Texas Instruments.
Yes, that's right. again, I didn't personally have that much to do with that
Sure.
part of the set design and show, but yes, I know. I do remember Texas Instruments. I used to have their calculators all over the house.
Nice. It seemed like at the time, I mean, I was a kid at the time. I was probably about the right age to actually have seen the show, although I didn't.
Yeah.
It seems like kids got computers. I mean, a lot of us intuitively understood
Yeah.
what it was about.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the adults were the ones who were more scared of them.
Absolutely. Even for my own family, I mean, by the time my daughter was born, they were in schools, they were in libraries, they were, and you know, she, as a little one, 5, 6 years old, she was sitting there, you know, typing things up, looking at things, making little pictures, and it's like, wow. And so still today, Kevin, when we have a problem, my husband says, Chelsea, how do you do this? I think it's just, you know, we didn't grow up with it. We came to it later. And, so I think the learning curve is different.
Absolutely.
But the kids, they just like, it was like no biggie. And I don't know if it's from playing video games as a first step or, I don't know. Yeah. They definitely learned it very quickly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And how to use them and make them user-friendly.
So this play ran for, I believe, 246 performances, which at the time was a booking record for that theater.
Yeah.
That must have been gratifying.
That was, I didn't even know that number. Or if I did, I forgot it. That's almost a year run. Well, yeah, they would go, sometimes they do two to three shows a day. Within either the same school or different schools in the area. So, yeah, how many performances did you say?
246.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And it was basically, I think, mid-January to May that they were on the road. I could look that up, I know, somewhere. Because pretty much what I remember is that we were working through December doing the writing, and then we'd rehearse early January, and then sort of like after winter break, it went out into the schools. Yeah, that's very satisfying.
Yeah, that's good.
And we used to do a preview performance in the theater and invite the LA Times and a lot of papers, and that was scary as all get out, but when the reviews were good, it was like, well, that was awesome. Yay, they liked it. The grown-ups liked it.
That's great. Yeah, I found a review of it in the LA Times, and I think there was another in the Orange County Register, and it was well received. I mean, people liked it, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm sad that it's so out of date now that I'm never gonna it's never gonna be revised.
Exactly. No one's ever gonna want to remount it. I should take my songs and do something else with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because who wants to? I mean, it's ancient history, but it's not ancient history that does anything. You know, like something about the Civil War. It's like early computers. Well, okay.
So tell me about what you do today.
Today. I am, this is last fall, I actually got back on stage because I'm also an actor. And I got to perform in one of my favorite shows called Once, which was based on the movie. I don't know if you saw it, between the Irish musician and the Czechoslovakian young girl, and they write songs together.
Yeah, I've heard
Does
of
that ring a bell at
I've
all?
heard of the show, but I have not seen it yet.
Yeah. So I do a lot of musical directing and conducting, and I usually get booked way ahead for those jobs. And I had this little window in my calendar last July, August, September, and I thought, you know what? I haven't been able to do anything on stage in so long. I'm just going to go try. Lo and behold, I got the role of the Czechoslovakian mother, Baruška, and had to learn to play the accordion in 6 weeks. So that was my most recent challenge and accomplishment.
Nice.
Now I can add accordion to my resume.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a blast. right now I have a church job that I'm the music director, pianist, singer, and choir director for. That's an ongoing gig. And then I work at a local high school where my daughter went to school, and I do vocal musical directing for their after-school musical. Professionally, then I work at the Laguna Playhouse. I just did 2 shows for them, back-to-back, Wizard of Oz and Oliver, in which I musical direct, play the keyboards, conduct an orchestra, teach all the vocals, all that stuff. And I'm we're in auditions now for a little night music that I'll be doing at the No Square Theater in Laguna Beach. And on it goes.
That's great.
So lots of mixed with my love, which is musical theater, and either in it or directing it or writing it. And yeah.
Very cool. Nice.
It's awesome fun.
All right. I think this is my last question.
Okay.
There were thousands of kids who saw Bits and Bytes. If you could send them, and now they are thousands of adults who saw Bits and Bytes.
Yes.
If you could send them a message, what would you tell them?
Well, I would ask them if they remembered their first experience with a computer, and if the show helped them understand more about that at the time. And now I would say, don't sit in front of your screen for hours on end. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty much it.
Great.
We can get so hooked into spending hours in front of this crazy little screen.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Oh, Kevin, it was a delight.
Finally, I interviewed Laura Leyva, the actor who played the character Happy.
Had been an actor for a long, long time. Started at the age of 7, so that's a long, long time. I came from Manhattan. I had lived in Manhattan for about 10 years, and I had made the move to Los Angeles. I moved here late November, early December of 82. Mm-hmm. And another actor I had worked with who knew I was moving to town gave me a call and said, if you're looking for work, South Coast Rep is their touring children's theater, is doing an original production called Bits and Bytes, and they're looking for the girl. I said, okay, I'm available. Mm-hmm. So I drove down there, got in touch with them, set up an appointment for an audition, went down to Costa Mesa, which is where South Coast Rep was, or is, and auditioned, got the role, and started rehearsal. So in short, I came from the East Coast and got work right away.
That's not supposed to happen. It's not supposed to happen like that.
For me, it was great.
Nice.
So I did a season with them of Bits and Bytes.
Nice. Can I ask about how old were you approximately when you were playing this part?
33.
Okay. So you're playing like, I don't think the age of the character is specified, but you were playing a maybe 15-year-old, I mean, a young person.
Yeah, 14, I'd say 14, 15.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So Happy. Did you know anything about computers when you took the part?
No, knew nothing about computers at all. No, so it was great. I mean, in a sense, because it was new territory, and I don't know that anybody knew a whole lot of about computers at that time.
Sure, yeah. So did you make it a point to learn about them, or did you just learn your script and go about it that way?
No, I learned my script.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
Sure.
Yeah, for that role. Yeah.
I understand from my research that you went to a lot of schools, and sometimes you did 2 shows a day at
right.
different schools, and I guess you were you getting up crack of dawn and driving out there, and tell me about that.
Yeah, we toured every day. So I lived in Los Angeles proper at that time. Now I live in Venice. And I was staying with family because I had just moved here and hadn't really found my own place yet. But I had a job, so I would borrow my cousin's car and drive down, and we would meet, I would say, probably 7:30, 8 o'clock. So, yeah, and down to Costa Mesa was about an hour and a half drive or hour and 20-minute drive. So it was up pretty much at the crack of dawn. We got there. We made sure everything was there, loaded up the touring truck, which is where all the props and the truck we drove actually was the computer. So everything it turned into the set piece that was the big computer.
Wow.
And it was really cleverly done, very cleverly done. And so we would load into the touring truck and take off. And we did 2 shows a day at minimum. Sometimes we did 3. Most of the time it was 2. We did 1 in the morning, had lunch, and then drove to the next site. And it was, you get to know your fellow cast members quite well. It was nice.
Awesome. So it was you and 4 other people. Is that right? I believe so.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, there were 5 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all. Well, I would say James LeGros and Sam were younger than me. They were in their early 20s, mid 20s. Deb also around the same age. So I think myself and the stage manager, Robert Crow, I think we were the oldest. We were the 2 older ones.
And you were playing for kids who were
in grade school.
Grade school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did they receive it? What was the reaction from the kids?
They liked it because it was participatory. We encouraged their participation, so they had a great time. And the music was very clever. And each of the songs was styled in a particular recognizable, what would you say, genre. Mm-hmm. So it sounded like there was rock and roll, and then there was a little boogie-woogie and a ballad. So it was all recognizable. And it was fun. The kids had a great time. It was a break from their day.
Sure.
And I think that was really good for them. And we went all over the major Los Angeles County and Orange County area, all the way up to Phelan, which is in the northeast part of Los Angeles County, and all the way through the Orange County School District. So we were all over. It was a trek sometimes.
I bet. Yeah, you did.
And a couple of times we had to go back to a school.
Why?
You do it. You do a show for a long time. You get very used to doing it. And then you start to find the little nuances where you can entertain yourself and have little private in-jokes. Mm-hmm. And after a while, you go to that many schools, you start to see the little caricatures of each school that you're in. And one particular school, we were using the teacher's lounge as our changing area. And on their teacher blackboard, someone had written voila. But they did not write voila in French. They wrote W-A-L-A, voila. Well, we took off on that, and James LeGros found so many places to throw in voila that by about 2/3 of the way through the show, we were no longer in control of the laughter among the cast. Uh-huh. So we were falling apart. And on the way to that show, the back of the touring truck, we had forgotten to secure it. So we lost costume pieces. shoes, belts, things like that. So we were making do with what we had, and that on top of it. And James LeGros was a master of being able to throw in his own little quips and improvisations and just little remarks that were very funny and that sometimes the kids just loved. But that time was for just the cast members, and we had to we apologized and, of course, said we would more than be happy to come back anytime that they could fit us in. So we wound up going back there, but that was memorable.
Wow.
It was the outtake.
Was the school, were the administrators upset with you, do you think, or just...
No, they weren't upset. They understood.
Yeah.
They were having fun because we were falling apart.
Right.
They were having a great time. They just weren't seeing the show.
Right.
Because we couldn't get through it. So that's why we said, no, we'll come back and we'll do the proper show for you. They were telling us we had a great time because, of course, they were privy to watching people fall apart.
Sure.
On stage.
That's always fun.
Literally. Oh, my goodness. We were just in. It was the kind of laughter that you get when you go to church and you cannot stop it. Oh, my God. But that was great. That was a memorable, memorable show. And most of the schools were great. They were great hosts. We were treated well, and the kids were fine. No, most of the kids who would normally be hecklers, I think because it was computers and they had heard nothing about this, or they had heard little strands, seen things on television, it held their attention. So that was good. They were captive audiences. It was good.
Excellent. So at one point in the play, you guys went out into the crowd and brought up kids.
Oh, yes.
And that seems like fraught, just like a dangerous thing. Because it was more than one classroom, and because we were in an auditorium, there were a number of kids who wanted to. They wanted to get up. So we never really had to pull up anybody who was reluctant. Once they got up there, they would get shy. And I think sometimes regret that they had thought that they wanted to get up. Right. It was like having a dream date with Happy, and that had to be. I mean, I would have been embarrassed as heck.
Oh, that was boy. Embarrassing. But like I said, there were some kids that were, me, choose me. So those were the kids that we gravitated toward. And, of course, once you pull them up, then when they realized, then it was embarrassing. But we just played it off. We didn't highlight their embarrassment.
Sure.
And basically it was fun. It was a lot of ad-libbing. And once again, James LeGros was so good with being able to play off of whatever reaction the kid was having, that it was great. I didn't really have to do that much. And I certainly didn't, I wasn't overt about flirting or anything like that.
Right.
It was all really playful.
Sure.
So, and James LeGros was great. He was great because he was really my sidekick.
Nice.
So that was fun.
Good.
He was very much, hey kid, I know what you're feeling, but don't worry about this.
Nice.
So it was good.
Do you think the kids actually learned anything about computers from this play?
That's hard to say, especially since remembering that when I was in grade school, having productions come and shows come or demonstrations come was always great because it was a break from the routine. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. It seems to me I remember one school, there was actually one or two kids who were interested in computers, who would want to come and ask us questions and things like that. Most of the time we got questions about what's it like to sing and dance, and do you like what you're doing, and things like that.
Yeah.
But occasionally there would be somebody, usually one of the kids in 7th or 8th grade, as opposed to somebody in 4th or 5th grade. It was usually one of the older kids who was really interested in the idea of computers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we didn't really know that much other than what was in the body of the play. So for us, we were just kind of, this is fun to do, and computers seem fun, and, encouraging them to find out.
Did you have Q&A sessions after the play? Or was this more of an informal thing?
It was more informal, because they usually had to get back to class. They were usually, we were within a period, and they usually had to get back to class. But, sometimes, kids would stick around, and sometimes we were assigned an older student to show us around, to make sure, that we knew where to park and where to set up our stuff and things like that. And that was usually the student who was more interested, whether it was interested in us as actors or interested in the material of the show.
Is this one of the weirder parts that you had played to that point? Because it seems like a strange little play that I would have loved to see it, but I'd still love to see it.
It was a cute production, actually. All the talent was really good. The choreography was great, and South Coast Rep has such a high reputation when it comes to production values that, as I said, the cleverness of the computer, the way it was done, the light system, all of that was so cleverly done. I had not done an original children's play like that. I had done some children's theater and some traveling children's theater, doing productions like The Fantastics, more, what would you say, classically oriented musical theater. But nothing, it was Beauty and the Beast, the children's touring theater, The Emperor's Nightingale. This was a kids' show group that I had originally started with a long, long time ago. That's where I did most of my children's theater. And those were plays that were put together by the company. And so we would redo fairy tales, certain tales, and do them theatrically, and then tour them. And that was fun. The Fantastics was the last school tour I had done before Bits and Bytes, and that was about 8 years before. So, no, I hadn't done any children's theater for a while. But coming here and being able to book work right away, and especially in something original, and for South Coast Rep, which is, was great repertory, is a great repertory theater. That was great. Nice. It was a great experience.
I'm interested in knowing more what you remember about the computer, the van computer thing. I know that the computer was provided to you guys by Texas Instruments, and maybe it was a big panel with a lot of blinky lights, but now you say it was part of your van. Can you fill me in on some details?
The van turned into the computer. Now, I can't exactly remember how, but it was so cleverly done. The panels of the doors opened up. Something came down. That's where I think that the panels were. And the sides opened up so that it looked like a big computer. And then Bits and Bytes would appear from either side. Mm-hmm. And when Mr. Chips came out, he would come out from behind it. So it appeared as if they were coming right out of the computer. And we were mostly in front of it. But I think that's what I remember. I should get out. I wish I had gotten out. I have one photo of the cast, but you can't really see the computer in it, as I recall. I think it's all of us just lined up taking a bow.
Huh. Did you get my email with the
yes.
with the links to the music and the score? I'm wondering,
yes.
Having seen it for the first time in a long time, if you had any thoughts or reaction, or as your brain cells were reactivated with that.
When I heard the music, as I was reading the text, the lines were coming back before I got there, which was really good.
Wow.
So that was fun. But it was the music. It was hearing the music that really brought it back.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought back the rehearsal period, which was intense because it was very short. And so we had to learn the original music within a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as I recall, that was where a lot of the work was. It was good, though. Learning, it's always good to learn things so that you're not repeating. So it's not repetitive. And all of
Sure.
this was new, and the music was good. It was fun.
I know how many performances you did, but can you give me a sense of how long you guys were actually touring and doing the show? Was it a couple of months? Was it?
Oh, yeah. January through the end of the school term. So January through late May, early June.
Wow.
So no, it was the most of the school year from January on. So we really went to a lot of different schools. I got to see a lot of California, which was great because I was coming from the East Coast. So for me, it transitioned me a lot into the area I was now living in.
What haven't I asked you about that show, about that time, that I should have?
I loved the title. For me, when I was first told, the show's called Bits and Bytes, my first thought was, what in the world does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Bits and bytes, because I had no idea how computers worked, what bits and bytes were. So I must admit, even though I did not really understand how the mechanism worked, even after doing the show, and I still don't, at least I had a little bit of foundational knowledge about how a computer worked. That a chip is what contains the information, and that the bits and bytes are what you need to move it around, and that all made sense. But I think computers were still pretty big at that time. We hadn't gotten to the teeny tiny Apple PC yet.
Yeah.
I think that was quickly to come. And that was one of the first computers that I had any experience with, was the little bitty Apple. I think that's what it was called at that time. I'm trying to remember. The Macintosh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Mac computer was that almost rectangular block.
Right. And that came out in 1984, which was a year or two after this play came out.
Mm-hmm.
That's about right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I knew when I would hear the word bits, when I would hear the word bytes, when I would hear the word chips, things like that, I had a little bit of connection to it through the play. But other than that, and I think that's true for any actor, I think because the material you work on is so varied and vast and different, you connect in little ways to areas that other people, of course, have expertise in. But at least as the actor, you're informed in a little bit of a connected way about what's what in that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I felt after working on this in terms of computers. I was not completely dumb when it came to the terms, and yet I still didn't know how it really functioned. Because, of course, my focus in life was working as an actor.
Sure.
Now, working as an actor requires the computer.
Which gets me to I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
Which gets me to my next question, which is tell me about what you're doing today.
Yes, well, that's pretty much what I'm doing today. I teach acting. I'm the master technique teacher at Stella Adler, and I also still work career-wise. I still do commercials, still do episodic work, still do films when I can. depending on the work out there and whether I get it. And the industry has changed vastly since we did that children's theater, since we did Bits and Bytes. And now most casting is done electronically. I haven't used a 8x10 picture and resume in over a year. And before that, it had been 2. I think I've been to 1 audition in the last 3 years that asked me to bring in a picture and resume. Other than that, they're looking at thumbnail shots on the computer. That's how it's cast now. So the computer has become the fabric of our life, basically. And now auditions are moving into you self-tape. I think the days when you go out to an audition, I think commercially you still go out, you still appear physically. But as far as dramatic, theatrical work, most things ask for you to tape your audition and self-tape it and send it in. I think that is really the wave of the future. So computers from that little show, as far as the connection between the technological world and the world of computers and theater and entertainment, most particularly the entertainment industry, I think the connection between computers and that has strengthened. It's enormous now.
A lot of kids saw the show, and they have grown up, and now they're adults, and maybe some of them are listening to this interview. So if you could send a message to those people who saw your show back then, and now they've grown up, what message would you send them?
Through the arts, I think if you go, whether you do your education and your self-growth through the academic world, do not forget the arts, because the arts usually foreshadow what is coming. And I think that's what happened with that small little piece of theater in a small little children's show. I'm sure all of those children who saw that show at that time, they're now adults who have children of their own, because that was 35 years ago. And I'm sure all those children have smartphones, computers, and I think my message would be stay open to the arts. They're the gateway to the future. And I think the combination of art and technology it's only going to grow in the future. So that would be my message.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This was great. Thank you so much, Laura.
All right, Kevin, you're welcome. It was fun.
The interview with Michael Bigelow Dixon took place on March 9th, 2018, with Diane King on March 6th, and with Laura Leyva on March 16th. Look at the show notes at AtariPodcast.com, where you'll find several photographs of the Bits and Bytes cast, reviews of the play, and articles about it. If you'd like to read the play or the score, that's trickier. They're not online due to copyright. I borrowed copies via interlibrary loan. If you saw this play, I would love to hear your memories of it. You can always email me at ANTIC@AtariPodcast.com. Special thanks to Tanya Thompson at South Coast Repertory for providing background information about this production, to Laura Leyva for providing photographs, to Michael Bigelow Dixon for providing articles from his archive, and to Diane King for digitizing her recordings from tape and allowing me to use them for this episode.